So there's a misconception that if you're single, you are incomplete, perhaps damaged, salvaged, and you won't be happy until you find your one. And that is not true. That is bullshit. It is a message that has been fed to us by media and advertising. The truth is, when you're single, you have the richest soil for growth. That's why I created this podcast. And unlike other podcasts, this one is host-driven, not guest-driven. That means I will be rotating health and wellness experts 3 times a week to give you the giant box of wellness crayons, not just the primary colors, so you can start building a meaningful life. It's time to give singlehood a cape.
Hi everyone, welcome to the Single on Purpose podcast. I am Ashley Torrent, and normally I'm here with my partner, Lair, but today I am with a friend and fellow intuitive that I've known for a little while now, Allison Wilner, and we are here to talk about what our work is like as intuitives, what it means to live an intuitive life. And we're going to talk about Allison's journey. I want her to share her journey, her intuitive journey. And really our intention is to help demystify the work that we do and to help anyone listening really connect to their intuitive voice and their intuitive language. And if they're open to it and you're curious about it, something I forgot to mention is that I'm a psychospiritual therapist and intuitive medium. So I spend so much of my time in my workspace working in an intuitive state. And I think it brings up a lot of questions about what that's like. And I think sometimes people can feel that an intuitive, it's very woo-woo or like some cheap party trick. But I'm hoping from this conversation that with Allison that you will really get an idea, you the listener will really get an idea of what it means, and maybe we'll ground it a bit and it'll feel more accessible to anyone who's curious. So welcome, Allison. I'm so happy to have you here.
Thank you so much. It's so wonderful to be here.
So I met Allison. She came into my class, Finding Magic in the Mundane, I believe last year. And although she'd been working as an intuitive for a bit, maybe you could tell why you entered my class, because I think it's kind of interesting.
Yeah, of course. So I had been working sort of on the side. I was working full time in education at the time, and I had also been doing intuitive guidance sessions on the side, and really wanted to continue to explore my own intuitive gifts and also be in community with other intuitives who were interested in continuing to grow and develop and to explore really also, what it means to live an intuitive life, an intuitively guided life. And I felt really sort of alone in my way of being and my way of navigating life. And I was really looking to connect with others who were, who knew kind of what that is like to have this, these, I really feel like it's like a heart knowing, to have like this knowing that comes through the heart. Or comes through wherever it comes through, for each person. But to have this sense of being guided and being here on purpose, and with a real feeling of wanting and really needing to share the way that intuition comes through you. And I also really loved the title, because for me, intuition is, it is mundane. And that's a big misconception, I think, that's out there about intuition. It is that it can come through in such a ordinary and simple way. And I think sometimes people imagine that it's like full on, angels coming down from on high in front of you. And, that people who are intuitive are just seeing, this whole reality that's just not accessible to most human beings. And that's just, that is the case for some intuitives. But I think that there's such a range of ways that intuition can present itself to us. And we've really been conditioned out of being able to just perceive it as mundane because we're expecting it to be so sort of fantastical. But it really can be so grounded and instinctual and sensory. And I don't even really like the term extrasensory because I feel like that's part of the conditioning also, is like anything that's not, that doesn't sort of squarely fit into the five senses is extrasensory. But I think that the way that our senses work is so much more fluid and holistic than we've been taught. And at least that's been my experience. And, what is sound and what is taste and what is what comes through our perception through those channels, they can blend. And in my experience, they can really what is extrasensory can actually be very sensory, can come through as sort of a combination of senses, or at least for me, it just feels it doesn't feel like an extra sense. It feels like a deeply human, embodied experience. And it doesn't take me, out of my body. Like, it's actually my connection to my intuition has asked me to go much more deeply into my body, in my embodied experience. And it's required me to really embrace my body and my humanity and not, escape into those unseen realms or the soul realms, but to really to be here and to be in the mundane, and to see the magic in it. So just coming back to the question, I loved the title, and I really was so happy to see it, to find someone else, to find you who really teaches that, and really helps us to, in your classes, you really help to help us to see that it's so much more accessible than than most of us come into these classes thinking that it is.
Well, and I think that is something that is really important to both of us, is to really help people understand that it is accessible. And what I love what you said is it's, not only a heart knowing, but it doesn't feel like an extra sense. I mean, for me, it feels like one of my most powerful senses that has been a part of my life, my whole life since I was a kid. I was even thinking this morning, I think in pictures, feelings, words, and colors. And for me, translating, it feels like I'm interpreting my own language when I talk. And I sometimes get so frustrated because I feel like my brain works in like a picture book. And I think you'll really understand this, of all of the senses. And then I have to find words that humans can understand and then string together to convey my point. But again, it's probably one of my most powerful sense. And I think it is for many of us, we just don't know it. I mean, in a reading, I can't tell you how many times I just gave a reading and a woman said, I feel like you just confirmed what I already knew. And I feel like so often we are listening to our intuition or aware of it much more than we realize. However, we don't trust it or we don't believe it. And so I'm hoping this conversation will just encourage people to trust it more. And I do want to talk about, your experience as a child, because I do believe that we come in here with this intuition and then we get trained not to listen to it, or told that it's wrong or that we can't trust it. I'm hoping that's changing. But for many of us, we weren't taught to rely on it. So that sense was not really something we could talk about with people. I mean, I remember sitting in the car and trying to intuit when the light would change from red to green. And I think back to that, and that was me playing with my intuition, and I didn't even know it. No one was talking about that. But what was your experience? Do you remember having intuitive moments as a child?
Yeah. I think for me, it was very, um, it felt very natural to, um, to be in touch with the unseen realms and and for me, a lot of the way that it comes in is vibrational and in sound. And not necessarily with language, but tonality and music.
Can I ask you a question? Would you
Yeah,
explain what unseen realms is to you?
sure. Yes.
'Cause I think that can be confusing for some.
I know. Yeah. I mean, I think for me, it's just anything um, that is really coming through that channel that I mentioned, that sort of my intuition, my heart knowing. I feel like it's almost like my heart is like an integrator of all of my perceptions. And when I feel my intuition coming in and through, it's like it it's flowing through my heart space. And and I feel this shift in their perception. And sometimes it's I'll be perceiving sound that's not actually there in the physical world. And I'll also be like feeling something that feels like I'll have chills, or I'll be feeling a presence that that is physical. It's like you can feel sometimes like a hand, like a pressure. Or I would feel hands. I would feel like hands on my forehead or hands on my crown. And so much so that I would just have to put my hands on my head to just confirm that there weren't actual hands there. And I think when you have those very physical experiences of what is sometimes called the unseen realm, it's hard to deny that, and I was very, I was raised in a very sort of home where, we weren't talking about the unseen realm, or, it was a very kind of like traditional way of perceiving the world. And when I started to have those experiences, you can sometimes think that you are going crazy or there's something wrong, with you. And when you have no context for it. And so that can be, difficult and scary to go through. But I think for me, it was like just feeling and hearing what I felt and heard. I couldn't ignore it, and I could be like, well, this is real for me. So, but I definitely, pushed that down in a way, and I think I didn't really see the usefulness of it, because I was really, especially, I am a person with hearing impairment, and I started to lose my hearing when I was 5 years old. It was picked up in the kindergarten screening that I couldn't hear the highest sound. And then slowly over time, I lost almost all of it. And now I'm almost completely deaf. I have a cochlear implant, and that really helps, with hearing in the hearing world. But from that point on, from 5 years old on, I was really focused on just fitting in. And it wasn't something that we talked about. And I just really just felt like I needed to shut everything down and just focus on being able to hear as well as I could in the hearing world. And so I really just let go of those gifts. And I did use my intuition immensely. It was immensely helpful to stay very attuned to my environment. And I went through my entire school experience with no accommodations. Like I used my intuition to get the information that I needed and to survive, and to really like fit in. And really, no one really knew. And so that was a really kind of specific experience of just like using it in a way that helped me get what I needed and helped me get additional information to be able to kind of to fit in and get, and to hear what really wasn't physically possible for me to hear sometimes. I just feel like there was support for me in from my intuitive knowing to be able to fill in missing pieces at times when I really needed it. And so yeah, but I think just going back like before 5, I think I remember I really loved to play by myself, and not in an antisocial way. I certainly had friends and playmates, but I really loved to spend time with toys and dolls and bears. And it was, I think, an early experience of ritual where I just had this experience of like the placement of whatever I was playing with just felt really important. I remember just arranging my toys in a particular way and having a feeling, like feeling the energy shift because of like the placement. And I also just felt this, I never felt lonely. I just did not feel lonely at all. And I was completely alone, but I was, I was in my house and there were people in the house, but I really preferred to kind of spend this time alone. And I felt so connected and I felt really seen and by this unseen loving presence. And I felt like there were these presences that were like with me, playing with me and kind of like holding me in this space. And I felt like that's what I always go back to, as like, that's when I felt the most myself. I think there's something about intuition that like when you're really deeply connected with it, it's connecting you to your authenticity and the rightness of you being here, like you're belonging here. And just as you are, with just as you are, and just that like that unself-consciousness of children, when they're just fully, expressing who they are. And I remember feeling so free to just create, and with whatever was there, for me to play with, to just create. And I remember feeling celebrated by this unseen presence. I just really felt like there was this loving, adoring presence with me, and I still like, that's how my intuition comes through, as this like really grounded, loving, supportive, and also like can also give some tough love too. Not just like everything you're doing is great, all the time, but like this just wise knowing. And I think like, in becoming an adult and then, going through my life, I think, and also doing a lot of work with trauma and, my own experience and healing, and just learning about parts work and doing like embodied trauma healing work. And just throughout my healing journey, it just really coming to learn about the adult self and the sort of the ground of being, like from a Buddhist perspective, like that true self, and that ground of self, and that capital S self, I think in parts work, or just, the adult, the wise adult within us, like just being able to hold us and hold all parts of us and love and accept all parts of us. And I really come to see intuition as really a part of that. And
in what way? Is it a part? Like, would you say it's a part?
Yeah, it's so interesting because I've been really thinking about this as I've learned more about internal family systems and parts work, and just that's been so helpful for me in my healing journey, and just learning about the self, capital S self, and whether intuition, how intuition connects to it, and is it the adult self? And
I don't know. It is interesting. I guess I would think that I think of it as like my higher self is listening to my intuition. And again, as we explore these things, what do we really know for sure, other than our experience? But it is interesting to think about what part of me is the intuitive self, in relationship to that. And, one of the things that you were talking about is having this magic as a child and feeling so supportive, and then going through something that shifted. It didn't take your intuition away completely. Like you said, you were still in relationship to move through school and to survive in a hearing world. But I'm wondering what brought you back to reconnect to that intuitive space.
Yeah. I just want to go back to what you were saying. Like, I love that your higher self is sort of listening to your intuition. And I feel like, I think that's how it feels for me as well. And it feels like, it does feel like my intuition is like the bigger supporter of my adult self. So when I feel under-resourced as my own sort of inner caretaker of my younger parts, and I feel like I'm an unfit mother to my younger parts. Sometimes I feel like I'm not equipped. I don't feel resourced right now to hold you and give you what you need. I can call upon my intuition as this bigger source of love and care, and that part of me can hold me, and can hold the adult me, and we can like together nurture the younger parts. So I feel like it's a helpful frame when I get overwhelmed as my adult self.
Well, and just on that point, right, falling into that intuitive space or relying on that intuitive voice. I know for me, it takes all the frenetic energy out of living. I know when I feel stuck in a therapy session, if I'm ever not sure of where to go next, I'll just ask, show me what questions to ask, show me what's next. And in my life, when I remember to not be in my head trying to think my way through something that I'm struggling with or I need to make a decision about, and I listen to my heart, it's like this beautiful flow of, I don't have to hold on so tight. It doesn't have to be so tense. The answer comes, or sometimes I just know that the answer will come, but it can't come when I'm trying so hard to find an answer or I'm thinking so hard. And it's such a beautiful space of trust to fall into that, oh, wow, there is this, it's like a good enough mother inside our own heart. That's like, This is where to go, right? I love how you said you're parenting yourself through your intuition, or when you can, your intuition guides you, but it's falling into that like good enough mother space that's like, it's going to be okay, and reminds us that we are love and that we don't have to move through fear so much. So
exactly. I love that so much. And just going back to your question, I think for me, it really came back, or just came to the forefront of my life again, when I was leaving an unhealthy romantic relationship. And my intuition had been clear, the whole time that this wasn't the right relationship for me and wasn't the right person for me. And it just took a long time. It just took time for me to be able to put that knowing into action and to take that action to leave the relationship. And I remember a moment where I was about to make the decision. I was like, those moments that are just so charged where you just, it's a choice point. Like you've just come to the point where you have to make a choice, and, there's just no going back. It's a really final choice. And, I came to that point, and, I had all the other voices in my head kind of giving me all these reasons not to leave. And, I just heard and felt my heart, this voice in my heart, and this knowing that just was like, it's time. And this is not your path to stay with this person. And, it was such a strong heart knowing. And, I remember saying to myself, if I like this part that's coming forward right now is so authentically me, like it just felt like the highest version of me and the most wise and the most sort of untouched by any of what I had been through in my life. Like it felt like just clear. And I just felt like if I said to myself, if I can't trust this part of me and this knowing that I have, I can't trust anything. Like this is, like, I have to trust this. Because this is...
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, this brings up a really important point, because I notice when I'm working with people, and you may have experienced this as well, and when you're giving readings, is that what people will say, well, my body is telling me to do this, or I love this person, so I'm supposed to stay in this relationship. How could you describe to someone the difference between, because I notice a lot of people will say, my body's telling me this, but they'll be in like infatuation from a younger part of self, or they're in a trauma response and really bonding to this person. But for you, what is the difference between maybe a fear-based choice or fear-based thought process in your body versus intuition? What does that feel like?
Yeah. This is the big question in our field. I feel like, yes. This is the big question. Yeah. And I think oftentimes, just so much of my perspective now is informed by parts work and, like embodied healing work. So, what I try to do and what I try to advise other people as well is like to give yourself, I think sometimes that question comes up of like, is it fear or is it intuition? And there's like an urgency behind the question that just doesn't help. Like people come and they're like, is it this or is it this? I don't know. And like, I need to figure out, I need to know right now. And often, as intuitives, people coming to us, like they want us to tell them, sometimes. And so, and that I think is just, it can feel disempowering for the person, to be outsourcing, that decision making and that process of discernment. I feel so strongly that I just really in my work want to be supporting people in being able to discern for themselves. And I think just to try to answer it, I think one is just noting if there's urgency and if you're pushing and the state of your body and mind when you're trying to make a determination, because the urgency and the pressure just doesn't, is not going to help you be able to access that your intuitive knowing. It's just, it makes it really hard and confusing. And if you have a very active mind, especially, I always describe my mind as like embroidered, like there's like a lot of embroidery and upholstery going on. And I can just build up very quickly a lot of layers around and complexity around things. So if you can take a breath and listen to the parts, give yourself space to really listen to the parts that are scared, listen to the fear, and being willing to not to agree with it necessarily, but to be present to what's here, and to listen to the concerns and the protests and whatever else, is coming forward within you from that place of fear, and to give it a chance to be witnessed and seen. And that's part of just not spiritually bypassing, I think, is so important, to just be with what's here, and sort of offering a space for fear to have its voice. And then what I love to do is kind of put them in dialogue, and then just imagine your most wise, compassionate self. What would you say? What would you say to that fear? And often that's intuition, and that can kind of bring you to your answer. And if you can't access that part of you, because sometimes we can't, it feels too high stakes. And I mean, these decisions that we make as human beings in our lives, like they can have really far-reaching consequences, and it can feel like a lot, to make these big decisions when we come to these choice points. And if you can't access that within yourself, to imagine, the wisest, most compassionate person you can imagine, and maybe you've been lucky enough to have someone like that in your life. And even if they're here or not here anymore, but like I think most of us, or even like from a movie or a show, to just access like a grounded presence that's regulated, in terms of like nervous system, it's a strong, regulated, voice that can come into dialogue with this fear, and offer some reassurance and try to take the urgency and pressure down. And if you listen to what that voice is saying, it's, I find the answers are often there.
I agree.
And it just takes it down. It takes down the pressure. And once those parts and that fear is more regulated, you can access that more peace and more clarity, from which a knowing can come forward. But I think it's really, a lot of it is just, is just feeling dysregulated and feeling pressured to have to make a choice. Yeah.
Right. And your intuition will not be hasty or feel urgent or scary. The voice will never be pushy. And it's so important to know it's a still, wise, loving voice. It's a very gentle voice, but a very truthful, certain voice. One of the things you mentioned was spiritual bypassing. And I think sometimes people have this idea, and there's a lot of it right now, like toxic positivity, spiritual bypassing, where people use spirituality to bypass the human experience. And I think you and I both agree, like for me, this human life is the vehicle through which the soul evolves. So everything that we encounter, everything that we experience is an opportunity for us to be a witness to our pain, to be a witness to ourselves, so that we can heal and learn from those moments. And that helps our soul evolve. Because I believe, it's not just one and done. I believe we're here to, we come into this life and we have the possibility to fulfill a destiny, which is to me, reach the highest potential of healing. It doesn't necessarily mean enlightenment. And to me, enlightenment, enlightened person to me is not someone who doesn't feel negative feelings anymore. An enlightened person to me is someone who can gracefully navigate the human experience and not get caught up in the turmoil and the turbulence and the chaos of feelings. And one thing I've witnessed is that my human life and my feelings is so important for me to tend to and be present for, so that I can heal and be the best version of myself. Repressed pain, disowned pain, ignored pain just creates depression and anxiety. And as I kind of imagine is like the body's just full of like stored up garbage, that it doesn't need. So I share this because I think, when they think of intuitive, some people are like, oh, woo woo, or that we're just over floating off in space, and we don't feel anything, or we're just not, we don't know what it's like to be sad or scared. And both Allison and I have complex PTSD, and we've had a lot of trauma in our life, and spirituality is such a beautiful support system to supporting this human experience. And it's not to bypass it. It's actually, I feel like it's this weaving together of the human and the soul so that we can experience the highest version of ourselves, or the most evolved version of ourselves. And to remember there's so much more than this like human life, that there's actually some other purpose happening here, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, it definitely makes sense. And it's, and I think part of our human experience is the mystery, it's not,
that's so well said.
Yeah. Just that not knowing. And I think, as intuitives, like we don't always have, full clarity, or at least I feel I don't, always have full clarity. And, it's a dance, it's a dance into knowing, it feels like, and it's a moment to moment experience of ourselves and our perception and our unique aperture for perception. Like what we can express through our unique bodies, through our unique life experiences, I think is so profound and so important to be able to bring forward, as we can, to enrich just the wisdom that's available to us collectively as human beings. I think there's a reason why we all have, blood and bone, and we're made of these materials, and we have these vehicles, these bodies that are so, have so much in common, but are also so unique and so different, and give us very different experiences. I'm in a body that has a disability, and that gives me a different kind of human experience. The color of our skin, there's so these differences are profoundly impactful, as we know. And so, and I can only speak for, my experience. But it's, I think the more that my intuition has helped me to, embrace the difference in my perception, and to share from it, as much as possible. And I think if our culture can support, and I feel like we're moving in that direction, although we have a long way to go, but just to support more stories of our lived experiences, so that we can understand more of what it means to be like more of humanity. There's just we're each an individual, singular expression of humanity, and there's so much that's unique about our experience, and also so much that is shared, but we can learn so much from those differences and those sort of unique experiences that people have. And I just feel I've been so just the diversity of stories and people that I've met, and has just enriched my heart and my life, so immensely. And I just have such a deep appreciation for the authenticity that just what our unique perspectives can offer, and how it leads us, going really deeply into the differences can lead us to more connection, and more of a sense of belonging, and not the kind of connection that undermines the differences or asks us all to be the same, but a way to really like a coming together and a sense of unity that is deeply respectful and honoring of each individual. And and I feel like our intuition is guiding us there. Like it guides us to what's true for us.
To the most authentic version of ourselves. I mean, you mentioned that earlier. You know, we're meant to be the most authentic version of ourselves. You know, we're our unique expression of humanity, and we're also a unique expression of the divine. You know, that divine energy, whatever you want to call it, God, love, spirit, universal energy. But I believe so strongly, like you, that we're not meant to be the same, that we're meant to really listen to our intuitive voice and understand in what way are we here to be of service, in what way are we here to live our most authentic life, and what does that look like? And I feel like, you know, our minds can kind of help us there sometimes, but our heart and our intuition is really the thing that pulls us in that direction or nudges us in that direction.
Absolutely. Yeah, I fully agree. I think the heart really does just lead the way towards that sense of purpose. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I was curious, you know, because I know you feel so strongly about helping people connect to their intuition. So I wanted you to explain what a session with you is like when you do a reading, because you shared with me some things that, you know, how intuitive information comes to you is different than it comes to me. And I love hearing people's stories of how their own, you know, intuitive language speaks to them, because I think every one of us has a different one. Our intuition does not come through the same to anyone. I think we have our own intuitive vocabulary and language, and it comes through pictures, feelings, tastes, smells, images. But what is it like for you when you're reading for someone? And
yeah, I think, you know, and it took me, I have sort of an interesting relationship with the word reading, because it feels I think, I'm not sure exactly why, but I feel like it's just a way of perceiving and seeing people and experiencing another person, another human being. And when I lean back, it almost feels like leaning back into this bigger, broader place. And it comes from me, it comes from my heart. And it's I perceive this song like this. I've come to kind of understand them as soul songs, but it's like the frequency of that person, and it's a really, they're each completely unique, and they're very some sound, you know, really exactly like cellos or violins, like a concerto, and some sound like chimes, some sound more etheric and celestial, just like this really kind of airy or like almost like sound bowls kind of tones. But I hear these tones, and it's just the most, it's just incredible. Like it just fills my hearing, and it's very, it like sweeps through my body and my heart. And I feel like what I am trying to do in my work is mirror it back, to reflect it back to the person. I think if we knew how beautiful we are, like we would just never, like if we could really see ourselves and the beauty of who we are as, you know, souls in bodies, and like the beauty of our just design as human beings. And if we could really perceive that, it would change a lot. The world would change. And yeah, it's just like, and I'm just always filled with so much reverence and honor and respect to witness people in this way and to hear people on that level, and and I think that that's a lot of what it is just trying to mirror that back so the person can really feel that themselves and experience their own vastness and their own beauty and magnificence, as a soul and as a human being with all of their human experience as well. It doesn't take away anything. It's just part of, I think it's just this part of who we are that we just don't have any mirrors of. We often don't, occasionally, if we're lucky, we find someone who can see us, and who really sees us. And it's just this huge gift. And you feel like, wow, this person is seeing my soul, can really witness me and is seeing something so much deeper than that I know is there, but I've never seen, mirrored back to me. No one's ever seen it, in that way. And I think, hopefully, we find those people but I think we need that. And, so that's what I try to do. And it comes through in that way. And then it comes through for me in these images. The sound kind of takes form in images, and I look at a soul picture in my mind, and we'll start to describe that. And then sometimes I hear words as well, and I will share. And I have guides that I connect with that come through and share as well. And I am able to connect with the clients, sometimes with their guidance team, or they're sort of the beings that are guiding them or with them. But I think the heart of my work is really in perceiving at the soul level and reflecting that back and giving people a sense of that part of themselves, that giving them a reflection of it so that it feels more real and can integrate it. And I think, people who come for these types of sessions are, I think, almost always aware of that. They know that this part of them is here, but they're needing, like you were saying at the beginning of our conversation, needing that confirmation and needing that kind of reassurance that this is real and that's this part of them is real.
Well, and I think it might feel hard to believe, and I know there's different types of intuitives and psychics and mediums out there, but I think with the people in my community and Allison and myself, the space that I feel like we intentionally create and the space we work in is the energy of love. And it might be like, well, how could I feel that? But I don't think, it's very rarely if anyone's ever left a session not feeling the palpable nature of love. There's not a lot of human mind and ego in that space. There's human mind for discernment and things, but it's not a fearful space. And to be in a reading and to be held for an hour in that space of love with loving energies coming through to support you and guide you and help you understand your purpose or who you're meant to be or who you already are that you can't see. I just think I feel so honored that I get to work in the space of love. I get to teach in the space of love. I think about it sometimes, how many hours I spend in the space of love in a week. And I know for me, it's recalibrated my nervous system and been a huge healing aspect of my own trauma. Because if we're spending more time in love, then we're spending less time in fear, so if anything you can get out of it is just being in that energy for an hour. And I'm just aware of time, so I want to ask you one more question that I think is important. What do you wish more people knew or understood about psychics, mediums, intuitives?
I think I wish that people knew that it's much more, I think, just going back to the beginning of our conversation about the magic and the mundane and your classes that you teach, that it's so much more, your intuition is so much more sort of mundane than you would expect. And I think it's when we start to really cultivate that witness within ourselves, like that observer who can really be present in our experiences, we can start to widen our lens of perception and be able to start to witness our own intuition coming through. And it can really transform your experience of just everyday life. And I think just my favorite examples are just really instinctual. Like, you look up at a certain moment and it's not cognitive. You don't have a thought like, I need to look up at that tree right now. But you do, and you see something magnificent. Like I saw an owl the other day, and owls are just really special for me. And I could have missed it. I mean, I had the thought of like, I could have missed it. And I don't know why. I looked at the tree at that moment. And what if I hadn't? I could easily have just missed it. And, but we can't, it's like I wouldn't have missed it because it wasn't something I could have, orchestrated, with my mind. It wasn't an orchestrated experience. It was just me being my instinctual self and looking around and saw it, and I think people can get very like, it can't be controlled. Intuition isn't, it's not controlled. And so, and that
can be ignored, but not controlled.
Right. Exactly. It can be ignored, but not controlled. Exactly. So in that, that can be really hard for the mind, to kind of take in, but yeah, just that it's to not be looking for necessarily something like extraordinary, or extra sensory, but to really like use your senses. And like, I just think our senses are just deeper. They're deeper and richer than we've been taught to believe, I feel. And it's like, it's not like a sixth sense. It's like we use our five senses really deeply, to perceive, and to perceive. If you keep following those senses down and out, like they expand and they broaden, and you can perceive so much more. So I just don't think of it as like something outside of, something you have to like bring in from outside of you.
No,
if that makes
it's already
sense.
within you. And and something I saw in your notes, well, two things I wanted to say. As a medium, when loved ones come through from the other side, they will sometimes tell me what they smelled like, what they taste like. Not what they taste like. That's so ridiculous. Like their favorite dessert, what it tastes like.
Yeah.
Awesome. They'll show me colors and pictures of clothes they wore, their favorite colors of their essence or things like that. So much of our work is through our senses. Like we perceive through our five senses, the clairaudience, hearing, and then clairvoyance, seeing, and clairsentience, feeling, all of that. So your intuition comes through your senses. And the last one I just wanted to make a comment on and just see if you had anything else is, you had in a note, there's a lot of impersonators on Instagram and social media right now, and carrying a lot of darkness. And I really think it's important that someone who's of integrity is never going to reach out and try to sell you something or offer you a reading out of nowhere. They're not going to scare you or say, I see dark energy around you. Intuitives with an integrity will never do that. Like that is the opposite of love for me, and trying to sell something and making people afraid. And I'll be honest, in all the time I've done this work, there's nothing scary that has come through. There's nothing fear-based that has come through. I might get suggestions of how someone can heal or ways they can work in their life, or maybe, I'm seeing that this relationship isn't of your highest good, but that information isn't scary. But some of the stuff I've seen is dark, and I've been impersonated before, and friends have reached out and said, oh, are you offering me a reading? And I'm like, oh, no, I'm not going to invade your space like that. So I just thought with the last few minutes I have, is there anything you wanted to say?
Yeah, I think, I think in our culture, there's a deep mistrust of psychics and psychic ability. And there's that history of, fortune telling and people using, intuition and psychic gifts as to swindle people, and so there's that's very embedded, I feel like, in our culture. And so it's interesting that it's surfacing, through on Instagram, and like these impersonators, like that energy, I feel like is coming back, and in a way that it is sort of online, in a way that it's that same energy, but it's like in a new form now. And I think it's because, it's like, because there is this rise, like there's been such a rise in interest in astrology and in intuition. And I think people are, because intuition connects us to our power, like our inner authority, and that's threatening, and so it's threatening to our, over culture and our, a lot of like our systems and structures, and so societally. And so I think it's another way to try to kind of cast a negative light on this work. And it makes sense that that's happening right now, because people are coming more and more into their power. And so I see it kind of from that context. And then also it feels like a very big kind of collective lesson around discernment. And just like you said, really like being able to trust your knowing and your feeling about people, and in that integrity, being able to sense someone's integrity and intention in their communication, and like what's being communicated underneath the language, and also just people's our desire to have like a quick fix, or just relief from uncertainty, and to give our power to someone else to just make the decision for me, or just tell me. That's what a lot of these impersonators, I feel like, are hooking into, is just like that need for, answers and clarity. And I think people who are operating in integrity in this work we're not here to take anyone's power, and responsibility for their own life. Each person, we are all responsible for our own lives and decisions. And our work is really to support and try to really reflect a person's own knowing. And I feel that that's very sacred, and a person's like the primacy of your own knowing, your own inner knowing, your own intuitive connection to yourself and to what's true for you. So I'm very careful about that in my work, and
that's so well
just
said.
just not stepping over that. My purpose is to help you get closer to what's true for you, not to tell you what you should do or what is true for you. And I think not everybody wants that. Like, some people just want to be like, aren't in a space to feel like they can really like do that work to connect with themselves. But I think, again, these mirrors of our soul energy just help to get us closer to that bigger truth that's wanting to come through. Like, when we get that reflection, which is what I'm trying to do. Like, when you get that reflection of your who you really like, just your bigger self, and your own wise knowing, you connect with, you can more easily hear yourself. You can more easily trust yourself, because you're getting that reflection, and you're like, okay, I can trust this. This is real to someone else besides me. And so that's what I feel like, a lot of us who are like operating with integrity in that way, we're trying to do and in our work. So.
No, that's so well said. And so where can people find you?
People can find me on my website is AllisonWilner.com, and on Instagram I'm at Allison Wilner.
So I'm so grateful for this conversation because, I just had this idea recently that I really felt like we need to start talking about this because to normalize it and to help people get closer to it. And I really hope we can have another conversation maybe about empathy. I think that would be another topic, but I really highly recommend Allison. Like I've said, I've worked with her in the community that we're a part of, and I've seen her work, and it's always of integrity, and her readings are so beautiful. They are like music. They're like art. I think it would be an invaluable time spent for anyone who would like to experience this. So thank you all. Thank you, Allison. And I hope you all have a good day.
I hope that episode was helpful. Hey, listen, if you want to share your singlehood journey, if you've gone somewhere and come back, if you have revelations and wisdom, please share your story. It's going to help other people. Nothing makes us feel more connected than hearing other people's stories. So just send me the audio of your story, and you could just record it directly from your phone and email it to theangrytherapist@gmail.com. Also, if you want our Single on Purpose newsletter, go to singleonpurpose.life. That's singleonpurpose.life. You will get tools and articles and other people's stories, and also Zoom links to private gatherings. So if you want to join our community, go to singleonpurpose.life. Thank you for listening. Be well. We hope you tell a friend. Hey, before you go, I want to invite you to the Single on Purpose private community online. It's off of social media, no ads, no algorithms. We got forums, we got live groups, we got webinars, and we have social hangs. We also have offline in-person hangs happening soon. So check us out. Go to singleonpurpose.life. That's singleonpurpose.life, and I will see you inside.